Welcome to Glazed Over,
a podcast for business tips, painting tricks, and gabbing with friends.
We're your hosts, Amy Williams
and Christine Steele, and we're so glad you're here.
Hey, Christine.
Hi, Amy. How are you today?
I am good. I'm having what I am affectionately calling Double Book Club Day because I am hosting book club tonight with my longtime book club group. And then we today have a very, very fun episode that is book related with Julia McNair.
I love this. I am a newly book enthusiast right now. So I'm here for it.
Yes, we welcome you with open arms, and we welcome Julia. Hey, Julia.
Yes.
Hello. How are y'all?
So good. How are you?
Good.
I'm fantastic.
Nice to have you back.
I know. You are our first ever guest on this podcast. Can you believe it?
I know. That was so kind of y'all. And it's so kind of you to let me come back and play some more.
Well, it's actually much kinder of you in the long run. But
yes.
Yes. Julia, if y'all don't know, is our she's been in the industry for a very long time. Do-it-yourself crafts is 26. 25, my bad. I gave her an extra year. And Julia is kind of our resident bookworm. She writes for the magazines. You can always find, what's the name of the article? You call it something cute. No, it's just Julia's here to stay.
I do a book review. I just do a book review every month.
That's
every issue.
Month, episode, issue, whatever they're called.
All of those things.
Yes. And you can always find some good recommendations from her. I, over the summer, needed to ask Julia a question and thought, we'll hop on the horn for 5 minutes. And then an hour and a half later, we got off the phone. So yeah, I'm excited.
We solved all the problems. We solved all the problems.
And in that very long phone conversation, you gave me a recommendation for a book that you had recently read that you were loving. And I, on a long road trip, about a week or two later, listened to it, and I was so inspired, so excited. So we have kind of turned that excitement into today's episode. Do you want to introduce the book a little bit, Julia, and the author that we are going to talk about?
I can't remember the reason we had a conversation at the time, but we started talking about books that we love. And
Virtual assistants is what it was.
Oh, that's what it was. That's right. And I mentioned that I had recently read Jon Acuff's new book, All It Takes Is a Goal. And I really liked it. I really liked it a whole lot. I like him too. So he's a blogger who turned podcaster. He's written several books. I think he's written like 7 books, something like that. And I've just been listening to him for a long time. And I really like what he has to say. He's a very creative guy. Came out of the advertising industry. So he was a writer and a creative guy and ended up writing inspirational books. He's an inspirational speaker. Would love for him to have not grown so big that he was too big for CCSA. But
I know
he's outkicked our coverage. He grew up in Massachusetts. He went to college here in Birmingham at Samford University, met his wife here. Now his 2 daughters are at Samford. He tells all of this stuff on his podcast, which is called All It Takes Is a Goal, which is also the name of the book we're discussing. And I just have these dreams of one of his daughters bringing him in to paint pottery at the shop so that I can convince him that he needs to come to CCSA and be a part of our crew.
If anybody could do it, it would be you.
Absolutely. It's my goal. All it takes is this goal for me to get what he wants.
Tell him about it. That's so cute.
I love that.
And I've seen him. I've met him. So he wrote a book called Soundtracks, which is turning those voices in our head that can be negative into positive. Like, how do you make it, essentially positive affirmations that you are telling yourself? He and his daughters wrote a version for teens. And they were doing a reading at a local bookstore. And I might be a fan of my local bookstores. So I went there and I was able to meet him. Then I just chatted with him a minute because he said something on a podcast many years ago, and he mentions this in the book, that really and truly changed my life. I mean, I don't say that lightly because those are not things you should say lightly. If something changes your life, it really needs to be that thing. But I can tell you exactly where I was on I-65 driving south from Nashville. I can tell you what exit I was passing when I heard him say, "Your creativity is bigger than your calendar." And I was like, what? And he just went on. He's like, you can think of all the amazing things. You don't have time. And I was like, okay.
Right. It sets you free a little bit.
It did. It told me in that moment that I had to quit thinking I could buy a glow forge. And because I wanted a glow forge.
God, we've all been there.
I wanted a glow forge like I want oxygen. I mean, it was a thing that I didn't just want, I needed it. I was on every Glowforge group. I was doing the research. I was doing all the things. I have no more time for a Glowforge than I have time to walk to the top of Mount Everest. I mean, this is not something I have time for.
I wish I could transfer like how much, like I'm turning red. I was on the site last night looking at Glowforges and I feel away, Christine. So seen right now. Like I'm just blown up. Like that's, how did you know?
Because they look magical, but I also have a whole lot of other cool toys that I want as well. And I think that's the thing. I mean, honestly, I think he's this way too, because he's a creative person. I think people who are creative and like people who are funny, not everybody is as funny as they think they are. And not everybody is as creative as they think they are, but we are a creative industry. And I think he comes from a creative place. So people who are creative, I feel like creativity branches out like a lightning bolt. You have an idea, which begats another 7 ideas. And those 7 ideas, they just keep growing and growing and growing. And it's like hydras sporting heads.
Absolutely. Well, and that's why something as simple as saying the sentence, your creativity, or in the book, he says your imagination is larger than your calendar. The way he speaks and makes it so, or writes, speaks, whatever. The way he gets this information out. Yeah, exactly. It is the same. He is very conversational in his writing. It's so easy to read this book, and it's so easy to take something that can feel like a really big idea, and he breaks it down so simply, like almost stupidly. Like I went into this book really sort of like, oh, what is this man going to tell me? You know, because Julia said, it was so funny, Christine. She was like, you got to read this book, and whatever you do, do not Google this guy first. Like, don't get a look at him, because then you will not want to read it. And so I took her advice, but you know, as he started talking, I maybe saw a picture of it, and I thought, what is this little man going to tell me? Like nothing that is going to change my day. And I fully was driving down the interstate. I was going down to Orlando, Florida. And I'm like searching while driving. Don't tell anybody this, by the way. I'm like searching for a receipt and a pen and like scribbling down what he's saying, because it was so,
really,
I mean, it was just like, yes, I can't recommend it enough. So we are going to kind of get into the nitty gritty a bit of this book today. We're certainly not going to cover everything.
Right.
We're going to cover the bits that were very inspiring to me. And I think you too, Julia. And, you know, Christine, by the end of this episode, we are going to convince you to read this book and everybody else.
I'm so excited. I already feel seen. Like I'm so excited. I'm here for it.
It's one of the things that I say about him. And, you know, like he's going to hear this one day, because
of course
he's going to, I mean, I assume everyone Googles himself.
And also, I'm sorry that I called you a little man, John. That's not, you know, I apologize.
Yes. He's that creative kid who is too smart for his own good, I suspect, or was too smart for his own good in 7th grade. Like he probably said maybe something he shouldn't have, and probably got put in the locker. I feel like he is a wannabe dude bro, but he's really a dad joke kind of guy.
Okay.
Deeply. Yeah.
And he owns that dad joke a little bit. I mean, he does do that, but he'll have guests on his podcast. And I'm like, you're not that guy. Why are you talking to this guy? That ain't you. You don't need to talk to them. But I think because he is so creative and comes from that creative mindset, that when he talks to people who have like, I bought and sold 7 businesses before I was 29.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not the vibe.
Right. So his vibe very much is, I want you to have the success that I've had. And he says in this book, he talks about how he was late to the party, that like the potential, like he felt like he left so much potential on the table for the first 4 decades of his life, or the first 3 decades of his life. Like he was not a good college student. He was sort of talk a good game, get a good job, and then burn out and move on for a long time. And it wasn't until he started realizing what he wanted to do, right? But then he wanted to tell everyone. It's like he's found this, you know, magic coin, and he wants to hand everyone else the source of it. And I really appreciate that, because I think he is able to see something and break it down. And I keep thinking about how within our studios, customers can come in and see something, like see a sample or see an idea, and they don't know how to get there. And they come to us because we're the experts, and we say, hey, we can help you do that. We can show you how. And I feel like that's what he does. He shows us how he got where he got.
And what I was really impressed with this book is the amount of data he gathers. So Christine, he like partnered with a scientist or something. Really? And that's kind of the part that I'm blocked out. Yeah, a statistician.
PhD
and
at MTSU.
He's got all these like user generated stories of like people that he put through this program, and like, oh, Martha, tried this and then it didn't work, and then she shifted it. So it's like not only
it's tried and true.
It's tried and true, and it's coming at you in so many different ways. It's not just, again, I sold 7 businesses, by the time I was 40 or whatever. It's this person being like, I wanted to write a book and I'm a single mom, and this is kind of me using your guide to do it.
One of the things that I also like about him is he's not always super clear on this, but he acknowledges some privilege that he's got. And I always think that when someone writes a book and tells you how to do something, they need to acknowledge some things, the help that they had along the way. He is one of the things he is very honest and upfront about is that his wife was super impactful in this relationship because he was able to get up and go write at 5 o'clock in the morning because she was getting the girls up to get to school every day. And he's like, hey, I had a partner. And he also talks about how every relationship needs to have a wow and a how person. So the wow is, wow, we could do this. This would be so cool. And the how person is like, all right, big guy, how are we going to do that?
Right. God, that's so weird. I feel like I'm both.
Well, and I feel like I am too. And I feel like successful business owners have both of those. Like, you cannot just be how all the time. I mean, you can be, but like, then you're an accountant. Okay. And which you're fine. Everybody needs a good accountant. And I came out of accounting to start my shop. But if you're only the wow person and you can't think it through, then you're never renewing your lease because you're flying out, you're going to go out of business. But if you get that good balance, or if you have that good balance in your world, that's how you're able to succeed long term. And I think that's an important thing to acknowledge, the role that you're not doing this on your own. You got a team, you've got a group, you've got a partner, a friend, a sounding board.
Yeah, a manager.
Yeah,
having somebody even to be. I love when I bring something to my manager and I'm like, I have this idea, and they're like, that's really nice. Let's think about this and how's this going to look. It's nice.
Yeah, it's also a nice reminder that you're just not alone. You don't have to meet all these goals by yourself, because you kind of can't. So let's jump into kind of like the layout of the book a little bit. So like any self-help book, there is the meat of it and then some flowery bits. So this is, to me, the most important standout parts of it. He opens the book by talking about how making a list of all of his best moments has helped him, like, with everything, kind of get this sight on what he wants to do with his life, because that can be really intimidating, I think, to be like, well, what I want to do big things. Well, what do I want to do? I don't know. So he starts keeping this giant list of just every best moment of the day. And it can be like, I finally bought the car I wanted to buy, or it can be that I came home from work early and had dinner with my family, or I went really hard at the gym, or whatever. It can be really big or really small, right? I know Christine talks about this a lot with kind of the self-care aspect of everything and mental health. It's essentially a gratitude list, right? It's keeping just a list of what you're grateful for. It's one of those things that's like, well, duh. But then you start writing down all of these things every day, and it can really change your mindset.
I think it's also one of the lovely things that I got out of that was he was able to be reflective on it. I mean, he was stuck in the airport when he started. I mean, he was sitting in an airport and had just given a great speech and had a great experience. And that sort of started the whole thing. But it included great meals. It included great conversations. And the more and more he built on that, he started seeing those things everywhere. It's sort of like if you get a new car, everywhere you look, there is that car.
Everybody
right?
has it. Yeah.
When you name your child Henry, suddenly every kid on the planet is named Henry. I'm just saying. But that's the sort of thing that I thought was lovely, because it was a sneaky way to make you see the great things you've surrounded yourself with.
Yes. And I think it will be really hard at first. I mean, I'm kind of speaking from experience here. I started a gratitude practice several years ago and off of like a self-guided book. And in the morning, you had to write down 3 things you're grateful for. And at night you did. And sometimes it was so hard. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it was like the cup of coffee I had, or it's sunny outside. You get to be really micro sometimes and start to really notice the things that matter to you so that you can implement it everywhere. Right. Mm-hmm. So off of that best moments list, I mean, and he's keeping a notebook and he's literally writing them down every day. He's got 1,000, over 1,000, or he's kind of adding to it slowly in that way. So he gets to, let's say 100. I don't know the exact number, but he starts to realize there is like a categorization portion to his best moments list. And he starts to look at it and he can see that he can break down every thing on his list either to be an experience, an accomplishment, a relationship, or an object. And that is the point where I started grabbing my receipt and kind of scribbling down on it, because that was changing everything for me. Because then when you start to categorize, he calls it categorizing your past. When you start to do that, you start to realize what's really important to you. So for me, it's accomplishment and it's relationships. And so I want to prioritize those, or those are going to be a part of my goal making, right? Do any of those kind of stand out for y'all, like as a category that you gravitate more towards?
I was so on the accomplishment and experience. I mean, I was blown away, because sometimes I was like, wait, was this an experience or an accomplishment? Right. And I like how he had the example with the hikes. Like if you went for a hike and you just had a great time, that's an experience. But if you went on the fastest hike you've ever gone on in your life, that's an accomplishment. And if you went with your best friend and you had a great conversation, that was a relationship one. And if while you were out on that hike, you found a really cool rock, I think he said acorn, really cool
he
thing.
Loves acorns.
He loves an acorn. Then that's an object. So you get like, you're able to see, okay, like I see you, I see where we're going with all of this. But I loved it because it made me, first of all, sort of happy that I didn't have as many objects on my list as I would have thought. Glowforge was nowhere on there. But like I felt like if I could go through and sort of see these things, and I did like he did, I started writing, and it was like, gosh, if I thought of things, and I'm going to be honest, like in this season I'm in right now where we're starting to get really busy, I don't always remember to go find those places and put them down. And getting ready for this podcast today, it made me really think about what makes me happy. What are those moments that have been great?
Yeah. What about you, Christine? What from the list do you think you gravitate towards?
I have to say relationships. I'm actually dealing with training employees right now. And I feel that I tell them different accomplishments that the business has made. And I'm just looking at this as a studio owner. And when I tell them what I think is an accomplishment, it actually is saying, I had this relationship with the VA. I got to make this impact on the blind group at the VA, and we made wind chimes out of ceramics. Like those are more, I guess they would be experiences in relationships. So that would be, So like, and trying to kind of show my employees what's important to the studio, because it's the same thing as what are you grateful for? I'm not saying, I mean, of course, everyone loves the one your studio makes money, but that to me would be more an object of how you can value yourself, like the studio. I definitely think relationships and experiences.
Yeah. And I think kind of going off of what Julia was saying of, objects and where you're focusing your attention, he tells a really fun story about how he thought he wanted this car. So he bought this nice poster of the car and he had it hanging in his office, and that was his goal, right? And years went by and he still hadn't purchased the car. So it helped him realize like, well, maybe I don't actually want that, or maybe my attentions have shifted a little bit and I'm not that person anymore. I think that's like such a fun exercise in really letting your own practices reveal to you who you are. I think we're often not paying enough attention to that in our day to day. And I loved that story. And he ended up like shredding the poster and that being this kind of like big thing for him. Again, I want to hate this guy. Jon, if you're listening, I want to hate you, but I can't. I can't. He's so endlessly charming. And actually in the audiobook, he does this thing where he's like, okay, this is an audiobook exclusive. I'm just going to tell you a story. And he'll tell you a quick 3-minute story that relates to the chapter. And it's just like, ugh, you're so annoying. I love you so much.
Right.
Which is how I think I get love.
I really just want him to, I feel like he's a pottery studio owner. I think we just need to get him to come and be a part of it. I think he is one of those people who would absolutely love getting to know a whole big group of people and talk to them and then go home and just, which I think is a lot of studio owners. I think we're really good at being out and gregarious and do the dog and pony show. And then we have to go home and sort of fold it in for a minute and just be like, all right.
I've said this on the podcast many times. Like my first few times at convention, I'd go back up to my hotel room and just cry. It's just like too much, too people.
I am overwhelmed.
Yes.
And that's, the reason I read so many books is because I do not watch television, because when I come home from work, and I'm not like, I don't watch television. I'm not that girl. I am I need it to be quiet.
Yeah.
I do not need a commercial to come on and make noise.
And be louder than the TV show. Like, what is the deal with that?
Cannot. I'm unable.
I feel like my dad in this moment.
I'm going to say I have a commercial for Glowforges. I mean.
Oh my God, right? And get you off track. Right.
Exactly. So yes, I think that gratitude list and, the happiness list, I think whatever you want to call it for yourself, they're just fantastic,
Yeah.
One of the things that I of course looked him up and before I got on the podcast with you guys, and the best moments list, one of the questions that he asked is, I don't know if it's in the book, what's something that makes you smile every time you see it? That even hits, like walk through your studio.
What a good exercise.
I'm here for it. I can't wait I'm going to go listen to it right after.
Running a fine art studio is a full-time job, and finding time to plan your marketing can feel overwhelming. That's where the Contemporary Ceramic Studios Association comes in. As a CCSA member, you'll have access to a treasure trove of marketing resources, from customizable marketing graphics to monthly social media calendars and more. Focus on your business while we help you promote your studio with tools that save you time and attract more customers. Join today and take your marketing to the next level. Visit ccsaonline.com for more information.
This made me think, how some places you'll go in and they'll have, coffee shops do this. They'll have something on a board. That's the type of thing you could use if you wanted to take this and motivate staff with it. Like, all right, every staff meeting, let's start with what is something that always makes you smile?
Yeah.
What is something that when it happens, every time this happens at work, my day is better. There are so many takeaways from this in life, but if you want to focus in on your studio, you could always say, how do I want us all to be happier at work? What can we do to focus on the happy? Because I think it's really easy to echo chamber bad experiences with, and giving yourself some touch points on how you can apply it, not just to yourself, but to your studio. And you could even put it up in the, if you have one of those boards in your store, what is something that every time it happens, it makes you happy? And then, or ask customers that. I mean, like my favorite thing in the world is to ask 6-year-olds what's their favorite thing about being 6. I think that you could take some things from that chapter. There's a whole chapter on like questions to ask yourself when you're doing your gratitude list and apply it to things in your studio.
It changes the culture from within, right? And
yes,
when everyone's happy, they sell. And at the end of the day, we're in business to sell.
Yeah. And people are happy to buy from people who are happy. Like, oh, she's a delight. I want to give her my money. No, but like, oh, she's a delight. I want to give her my money.
Exactly.
I love her. Every time I come into that store, it makes me so happy. That's the goal.
Yes, so absolutely. And it's a good way to evaluate your staff too, as in if you ask them what makes you smile when you come in here, if they answer their paycheck and that's all they can say, then like for me, my values here at the studio, that wouldn't fit my vibe here. Like, I mean, yes, money's great, but I want them to be excited about teaching people art and doing all that kind of stuff and have those experiences with people. If you're here just for that money, everyone loves money, but I don't know. That just makes me kind of think of how to evaluate your staff too and what your goals are compared to what theirs are. My mind's going, making everyone listen to the book too.
From this area, he kind of launches into how we are the hardest, or he's, the way he says it is so funny. He says easiest persuasive person or the highest persuasive person, whatever, the most persuasive person, there we go, I'll get it eventually, is you. Like, we are so good at being like, no, we won't do that. Like, I have every Saturday morning, I have the best intentions to go to the gym at 9 a.m. That's the last class of the day that I can get to. And Friday night, I'm like, yes. And Saturday morning, when my alarm goes off, I'm like, no, and it's not even a thought. And so he goes into having, he starts having this conversation about how we are the barrier, right? We have to get over ourselves. And the advice he's offering to kind of get past us saying no is to gamify everything. And this is interesting. And, think about it as like a sticker chart when you're a kid for your chores. Or for me, it's a to-do list where I can scratch something off. Like, that is the game. I was listening to him talk about this and got very much like, oh, that's why you like planners so much. Like, you can write it down and you can cross it off. Like, it feels like a little game that you're winning. And I just thought that was really interesting. And he talks about dopamine. People think that dopamine is like being happy, but really dopamine is the feeling of anticipating something good. And we're sort of chasing that always, and especially when it comes to like accomplishing something, you know what I mean? It's not like finishing it that feels good. I mean, it is, but it's like getting so close and seeing the path that you're on is the right way.
I loved how he talked about one of the greatest dopamine hits he gets is when a meeting ends early.
Yes.
Or even better, gets canceled.
Yes. He talks about, because it's your expectation that the meeting's going to run long. So you're surprised and it's like, oh yeah, that he really gets it.
Yeah. I mean, and it's that whole, like, there are no better plans than the ones that get canceled. I mean, like,
nothing better than that.
Yeah. What'd you do this weekend? Nothing.
Or that text that's like, hey, do you still want to go out tonight? Because if not, like, it's totally fine. Like, I won't be bummed if you don't want to. And then the other person's like, yeah, actually, like, let's stay put. And I'm like, yes, best friends. Like, that's exactly what I wanted to hear.
Yeah. So I think, again, he is us. And I think that he is right. Like, the absolute hardest person that we deal with is ourselves. And, that's the person you can never get away from.
Yeah.
So you have to figure out what is the thing that makes you tick. What is the carrot that's going to get you keeping going forward? And I like how he goes into how this plays into how you plan what goals you're going to do. And I mean, just, he sees it. He sees how those performances lead into, here's this. Oh, right, you did it. Congratulations. Yep. You did it. You did it. Yay.
Yeah. And he talks about zones, right? Like, that's the last kind of thing he'll hit before we get into the goal aspect of everything. He talks about the comfort zone, the potential zone, and the chaos zone. And obviously the comfort zone is what you think. It's not wanting to get out of your current lifestyle because it is comfortable. Often you don't realize you're in the comfort zone, right? And then on the other end of things is the chaos zone, where you're like, I can do it all, and I can do it all now. I can read this book before this podcast episode. I can get my nails done and do a full day of work and prep for my book club meeting tonight and, clean the house and everything. And you just can't. And so in the middle of that is the potential zone. And he's talking about, like, it's the sweet spot. It's like how you are motivated enough to keep going, but you're not stuck in that comfort zone, but you're not overcommitting to anything. And that really spoke to me because I feel like I've lived my entire life in the chaos zone and a little bit of the comfort, but I definitely am like, sometimes my chaos is the comfort, and that's been like a hard realization. And he talks a little bit after that about how you will never start your goal if you're thinking about the end goal first, or the end game, or the end product. And that really stood out to me because I'm often like, well, I want to do this thing, but like, I don't exactly have it figured out, so I can't start. And that's just not the case.
Well, and I think that comes from, there have been a lot of things over the years where it's like, well, you have to know what you want before you start.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, I know I want to go there. I don't know exactly what I want, but it's like, oh, but since I don't know my final destination, I feel like I can't take that first step, because what if it's the wrong first step? It's that fear of doing things wrong and not having that chance to go back and redo stuff. It's a lot of fear, dread stuff. It's that I'm afraid I'm going to fail. So, the only way to not fail is to not start. Like, that's
exactly.
You got a lot of platitudes on things like that, but it's also true. it's very easy to stay comfortable and stay in that comfort zone. And it's also really easy to just be like, all right, we're all in.
Yeah.
Go and not have a plan. And then you're like, oh, wait.
Right. And it's also easy to be like, okay, I want to get healthy and I want to become a millionaire and I want to be a better partner. And those are all like really big things that you can't accomplish kind of all together, right? And so then he starts talking about how you should pick the game that you want to win, is what he calls it. And that's looking at these big overarching goals that you have and just picking one. And he also categorizes those. This man loves category. Really? And it's career, finances, relationships, health, and fun. I like that he adds fun in there because sometimes in these self-help books, they don't do that.
Well, they think health is fun.
Exactly. Oh my God, it's not. It's not. No. And I just really, I don't know. That really spoke to me of like, okay, stop trying to fix every single thing at once. Like I can't start a new diet and wake up at 5 a.m. and save $1,000 every Monday morning, but I think that I can. And I could just pick one of those things, and probably not the $1,000 thing unless someone wants to send me $1,000. But I can, I can wake up at 5 a.m. on Monday and try a new schedule and see what that looks like. So I just appreciated that.
Right. And I think it's sort of that same thing. Like if you can do one, then you know that you can do another one.
Right.
Because you've done one thing and you haven't derailed yourself by being overly ambitious or, thinking that you can be three places at once with your own life.
Yeah.
Then you're like, okay, we got that now. And it's sort of like something that is ambitious the first time you're doing it. But if you do it enough, it becomes routine. Then it just becomes a thing you're doing. So like working out, and I am not the girl, like it is not my thing, but I decided that I had reached a point in my life that I needed to pay attention to my health because, old. And I literally was like, I have to be able to get up and down off of the floor. Like that was it. If I fall, I have to be able to get up, and I need to be able to fall and have people still laugh and not call it
right.
Right.
Oh, Lord.
And so that became my goal, was like, I'm going to be able to do this. And at first it was not pretty. It was not a pretty thing, but every single day I did it a little bit, and now I can get up and down off the floor. It's amazing when I look back a year ago, and you're young. Clearly you were young with the laughing there, but but it's
I'm just visualizing it. That's all. I'm not going to lie. That's
not fun. Not a fun day. But I mean, it's just one of those things where I was like, I realized at some point of standing on my feet for 25 years, I was like, oh, wow, I hurt.
Yeah,
and
everywhere.
so now it's like twice a week I get up and go exercise, and I do those things, and not because I want to, but because I have to. But now it's just a thing I do.
Right.
So now I can set another goal that has something, you know what I mean? Like, let's not do them all at once. Let's not be hasty.
No, absolutely not.
Now, does he talk about anything like if you don't achieve that goal, what do you do? So instead of feeling a failure, does he talk about anything like that?
He does. He talks about reframing and like reevaluating. Because I listened to his podcast and I've read his other books, I may not remember exactly where in this book because it conflates. But he's also like, give yourself some grace. Failure is not permanent. This is not like, oh, well, 0. You get an F-. It's like, okay, so that didn't work.
He has set up his goals in a way where they are so actionable that you kind of can't, like, if you do fail, it's not the end of the world.
His thing, if you follow him on social media, if you follow him the first of every month, he's like, it's a brand new month. We're all starting fresh. You got however many, 30, 31 days, whatever you've got coming up, it's a fresh start. And he believes in that. I get the feeling he's this guy that like every day he wakes up, he's like, all right, it's a great day. And I'm like, oh, wow.
Don't you just want to slap him across the face? I'm sure his wife is like,
so
shut up. Like, not today, John.
Yeah. Like, dude, you need to go be that enthusiastic around someone who's had her cup of coffee. But like, I get the feeling that he really and truly is that guy that is like, it's a great day to have a great day.
He kind of reminds me of Kathy in that way. Crafty Chica very much has that positive attitude.
Like, font. They are the same font.
That is so. That's what my brain's doing now. Like, I love that.
And for the record, I don't want to slap Crafty Chica ever.
No, because
hug her.
all the time.
be right up with you and just
yeah, I want her everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. So now I'm going to listen to the book and think of Kathy. Yeah. And I love that. I'm so excited. Even more.
So he categorizes his goals or names his goals as easy goals, middle goals, and guaranteed goals. And kind of the quick snippet about those. Easy goals help you escape the comfort zone. Middle goals help you avoid the chaos zone, and guaranteed goals help you live in the potential zone. And then he kind of goes in and really breaks these down really nicely. And so I have them kind of quickly. I'll read off a couple about each if you don't mind. So easy goals have short time frames, right? 1 to 7 days. That was mind bending to me. Like I've never thought about it. It could just be that simple. They have obvious first steps. They are not expensive, and they match your current schedule. I mean, come on. So for him, he gives some examples like, oh, I want to complain less often. Can't relate. Criticize less often. Also can't relate. And network with more people. So that's kind of his small, actionable first step kind of goals. His middle goals, let me turn the page. Isn't that nice ASMR if everyone's listening at home? Middle goals are timeframes of 30 to 90 days. They're flexible. They don't fall apart if you miss a day. So that he does go into that a little bit more, Christine. They encourage you to tweak your schedule. They have patience built in. Ooh. Right? That hits because I don't do that. I don't
have patience anywhere.
No. And obviously they're more challenging than your easy goals, right? But they cost more of your time, which is, he says, your most valuable resource, but then the payoff is even greater from there. Yeah.
So working out, would that be an easy one, or because it wouldn't cost anything? But I would think if you give an easy goal, though, that then you don't have to change your schedule. So like doing it like 2 times a week is better than setting yourself up for failure for 7.
Yeah. Yes. I think by saying, instead of saying, I'm going to start working out, I think it's getting specific and being like, I'm going to go for a walk 2 days a week. Yeah. And then turning it into a middle goal makes it, I am going to go for a walk 2 days a week, but then also maybe do 1 day of strength training or something like that to kind of add the extra bit. Yeah.
And in the studio, I have been trying to get us to refresh some samples. Now, what I like to do, wholesale change, because, that's how it is. You come back from convention and you're like, everything must change now. So what I said instead was every week I want us to pick one sample that is really inspiring people, and let's make a different version of it. So we've got 2 ways to show how that happens. Like we bubble paint all the time. We have 1 sample. I'm like, maybe we need a different way of showing this. Or like the things that are like super popular in the studio, let's take those, and I want to have another sample. And I was sort of looking at towards the holidays. So since I've been back from convention, I'm like, we're not going to kill ourselves doing this, but like once a week, I want us to like, okay, what are we telling people and not being able to show them because we don't have a great sample. So that is that easy, not overwhelming me, not like stressing me out. If we don't do it, it's all right. We can go back and we can do one next week still. But those are some types of things where you can take this type of idea and put it into your studio.
I like to tell everyone that I have completed my easy goal of finding what the guaranteed goal is in the book. So I can now read that part on to you. So you guys vamped perfectly. Again, we don't pay any of us enough. So okay. Funny. A guaranteed goal has an extended time frame, usually 90 days to a year.
Perfect.
Done. No. They're 100% in your control, which I think is really interesting. We don't always factor in thinking in that way. They're easy to measure. I also definitely am bad at doing that in my big goals. They force you to be more deliberate, and they sound impossible when you tell people about them. That scares me a little bit.
Ooh,
right?
But think about how many things you've done like that, Amy, y'all. I mean,
that's true. That's true.
And if you own a paint your own pottery studio,
I know.
If you started a business, I mean, we've done things that absolutely terrify mere mortals. Like we have done things. So you can do other things because you've done things before. And that's a thing that he dances around that some. And then sometimes he says it outright. Like, if you can do this, you can do that. Back when I used to run, long time ago, I had someone tell me, well, of course you could run a marathon. If you can run a mile, you can run a marathon. Yeah. And I was like, woman, you've lost your mind. But she's like, if you can run a mile, you can run 3 miles. If you can run 3 miles, you can run 6. Da, 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 da. And I'm like, yeah, I don't need to do that marathon thing, but I could.
Wish you could make better business decisions backed by data? CCSA members get access to exclusive industry reports, surveys, and research that provide valuable insights into trends and customer behavior in the fine arts world. From pricing strategies to consumer preferences, the CCSA gives you the information you need to stay competitive and thrive. Ready to use data to drive your success? Join the Contemporary Ceramic Studios Association and get access to these valuable resources. Learn more at ccsaonline.com.
We can do hard things. We can do ambitious things because we have done ambitious things. And so we've got history. We've got that history. And we can take all of these things, that these component parts that build up to it, and do it again.
Yeah. And I think it's a testament to your community too, right? Like I'm certainly currently sitting in a room, sort of with you two. Mm-hmm. And I say, oh, this saying a thing out loud that sounds impossible is scary. And you two immediately are like, no, you can do it. It's fine. Like that is who you surround yourself with. Mm-hmm. And, they build you up and they, are realistic with you. And I think that is such a big part of meeting our goals, is just finding the right community.
And I think another interesting thing about it is you have to voice these goals. Like, okay, it sounds crazy when you tell someone.
That's exactly right.
When you do tell someone, when you speak that, you start to speak it into existence. You're like, hey, I'm doing this. And they're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. You absolutely can do that.
Yep.
And so then it's like, what? I can do that. Turns out, and I am amazing. And we are incredible. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, essentially. But it's because when you start to speak aloud the things you want to do, you also begin to formulate the how to make it happen.
Yes.
Now, Amy being the social media guru, would you share, could these be content? Could you share your goals? And can you, if you look back and you think about those things that you thought were really hard before, how can you turn that into something that you can share with other people? Does that make sense with my question?
Of
I don't
course.
know. How can we turn this into something?
Yeah. I think if it matches with what you typically, so obviously on your studio Instagram page or Facebook page, you probably wouldn't say, hey, everybody, this is Christine. I'm going to try to lose 15 pounds. That kind of wouldn't fit. Right. But if you were like, this year for Christmas, we're trying to, money can be kind of difficult, but let's say, oh, we're trying to sell this many spots in our trees class. Like, hey, you can help us get there. I think that would be a fine way to do it. I think it can depend on how big the goal is and how personal the goal is and how much your community can help you with that goal. What do you think, Julia?
Thinking about big, meaty goals. Could it be something like, we want to add wheels? We're really hoping to add wheels and figure out how to implement a clay aspect to our studio, or bring glass fusing back, or something along those lines. And we want to tell you that we're working on it, and this is sort of the steps we're taking. And then you get people invested in it. And it's sort of, these are some accountability things, because if you've told people you're doing it, then it's going to feel like you need to do it because there are people that are going to bring it up.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Christine. You're hired.
I like it.
It's funny because I was thinking about how I didn't even think about I'm not a good person to remember to do things on social media, apparently, because we totally need to be sharing these samples that we're making as, hey, we love bubble painting and we've been showing you how to do it. And here's the newest sample that we've made that we love and need to come and do this.
Yeah, I follow a girl on Instagram, and she came up on my For You page one day and was just like, this is day 27 of me building a sticker. Oh my God. Why can't I think of the word? Not emporium, but
collection.
No, what's the word when you're? Oh my God, crushing it today. Empire. This is day 26 of me building a sticker empire, and you're watching her design a sticker. And of course, at the end of it, she's giving me a call to action. I can buy it on her website, and that's so smart, right? Because she's letting me in on telling me what she wants, right? Building the sticker empire, showing me how she's doing it, and then helping me be a part of that. And so when I come back to her on day 67, I can see how far she's come. So I think that is also a fun social media way to do that without it being money goals. Nobody wants to hear you talk about money, which I think is its own kind of issue. But, if you make too much money, they don't like you. And if you don't make enough, they don't like you either. There's kind of no sweet spot. But I think that's
and you can't be too proud, and you can't be, that's that whole, we're never going to let anybody be themselves. Like something has to be, it's misogyny, but whatever. Okay.
That's next week's podcast topic.
But I think that there are ways you can say, hey, we're really excited about X. Mm-hmm. This is what we're doing about it along the way. We're going to keep you updated. And there's, and sometimes it's sort of like, what is that goal that your studio is going to have, that you want to have for your studio? Are these personal things? Sometimes it's like, hey, our goal is to make sure we don't have a whole lot of clutter in the studio. That's not something but I think that there are some realistic things like that you can look around your studio and go, what is overwhelming me? What do I want to change? How can I break this down into a goal that is a short-term goal, like a super short-term goal, or a 30, 60, 90-day goal, or a really long-range goal? And sometimes there are things that you can share, and sometimes they're not, I want to say, like, maybe not something that is obvious that you're sharing, but as you make changes, you're going to share them along the way.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you're trying to get all of your procedures and get everything streamlined within your studio and how you're going to run things, and you want to get all of your policies laid out, well, all of that stuff, because it can get overwhelming. And I think that a lot of people came out of pandemic, the playbook had been thrown away and we had to start fresh. And I think a lot of us are still ad hocing things a little bit more than we're comfortable with.
Yeah.
And now we're looking at, okay, we're coming up on 5 years. Let's time to start thinking about, how do we start riding the ship again? If your big goal is, hey, by the end of 2025, I want to have my policies and procedures streamlined so that we're all doing everything the way we want, the best possible practices for our studio, that is going to show across everything, because your studio is going to get better.
Right.
And you're going to have these policies and procedures in place. And those are goals. And you can break these down into a lot of small goals. Like, I want to revamp and revisit how we do our birthday parties, top to bottom, start to finish. And if you start really looking at it, just the act of examining it is going to change it and make it better. So you do that, you go through all of that process. What's going to happen is your store is going to get better because you're paying attention to it.
Yeah. And he talks about how guaranteed goals start with easy goals. And I think you talking about revamping the birthday party package is the easy goal, right? The easy goal is that you sit down one afternoon and you say, okay, I'm going to look at what it is. I'm going to look at what's working and what's not working. And it just snowballs from there. And that to me is very exciting. That was the vibe of coming off this book. Right. Where I was like, I can do anything. I can truly do anything. It's just a matter of like tiny steps. And he says towards the end, if you worked on your goal today for 15 minutes and that's it, and you didn't do anything yesterday, that's infinitely better than not doing anything. And so thinking about it, 15 minutes, that's nothing.
Does he give you any kind of guideline of like how many of these goals you should have? Kind of like the girl, calm down. Don't start with this many.
I think he lays it out nicely to where you are not overwhelming yourself, because that's kind of like a pillar of what he's saying. Like, you can't be a chaotic person about this.
Again, I can't remember if it's in this book or just sort of his vibe in general. A lot of times he will say at the beginning of the year, don't create one perfect goal, because one perfect goal, if it gets derailed, you might be like, that's it. I'm done.
I'm done.
I am a failure. And also don't have 1,000 goals, because how are you possibly going to do all the things? Like, you cannot make your bed, drink a gallon of water, run 3 miles, eat this many grams of carb. I mean, like, all of the things you can't have 1 million goals, but there are a lot of numbers between 1 and 1 million.
Yeah.
So you can maybe try 6. You could maybe try 3. And once you've got those 3, once those 3 goals have become habits and you don't think, well, you can add some more. And like, this is one of the things, I don't start January 1st because I'm still tired from Christmas. Like, kids are still out of school. We're still busy. We're still like, the store is crusty because we have just survived. Right.
Yeah.
So I tell everyone, I don't start my new year until 1 week after kids have gone back to school.
I kind of do my birthday, to be honest with you. My birthday's in the middle of the year, and that's kind of my fresh start. And it feels so much less pressure.
Yes. You can pick. These dates are arbitrary anyway. We didn't pick them, but they're all made up anyway. If it's not a solstice, it's all arbitrary. So you can pick that date that you want to say is your beginning. So you could say, all right, you know what? We survived Christmas and we're going to clean up the store a little bit. And February 1st, I want to start with name it. Do it a week. And then after a week, go, heck yeah, that's working.
That's hard. I am somebody that if I don't do it on the first of the month, then I'm like, I'm not doing anything for the rest of the 30 days because
I get that way
missed
too.
One day. I'm supposed to be gluten-free. And if I mess
supposed
up,
to be.
Yeah, right. Celiacs, it's fine. If I eat gluten by like October 2nd, then I'm like, nope, the rest of the month is bread. Like it's hard. I'm really bad with that. So
yeah, I think it's genuinely a day at a time. You know what I mean? Like, and like I said, I read this book in June when Julia recommended it, and I was like ready to hit the ground running. And then things got busy, and then birthday came around and things like that. And now we're sitting here in October, and I'm sort of like, crap, I'm not where I wanted to be. I'm nowhere near where I wanted to be with Christmas, and I feel very defeated by that, but I know that I can try again tomorrow. You know what I mean? And something that I've been trying to do, I wrote it in my planner on Sunday. This week, every day, I'm trying to do one helpful thing for work and for me. So technically 2 helpful things. And that's all I can focus on right now. And it's been really good. Last night, with anticipation of book club coming here tonight, I got everything ready off the floor, clutter put away so that I can vacuum. And I'm not having to deal with that today. And it genuinely took 15 minutes. So when he's talking about taking 15 minutes for your goal every day, I'm starting to realize like, oh yeah, I guess that is possible, huh?
One of my favorite things that I learned from another book, it's a book called The Lazy Genius, also fantastic. One of her things is, what is one thing you can do now that will make later you?
Yes.
And so every day when I leave my studio, I look around, I'm like, what is one thing I can do right now without like doing too much? One thing that I can do to make it easier for tomorrow. It's not the same thing every day, but there's usually one thing I can snag, do, whatever. And actually, that started off with a goal where I wanted to be able to do that every single day. But if I miss a day, if I get home and I'm like, oh, I just walked out the door. Okay, well, tomorrow I can try again.
Tomorrow we can always try again.
And that's the big thing with him. I feel like that's the secret sauce, is that there's always the chance to start fresh, to start new, because every month has a first of the month. Like my favorite moon phase, my favorite lunar phase is a waxing gibbous, because it means potential. A waxing gibbous, it's not yet full, but it's getting there. And so you've got potential. And so everything, you've got these cycles, and you can do stuff and always give yourself that grace to start over. Even if you forgot to do Wordle yesterday, you can start your streak again today.
It's true. They keep taking mine from me. I'm about to call New York Times and pitch a fit. Kind of my last takeaway here, because we've kept Julia all afternoon. My takeaway with him is that he just makes everything, I've said this 1,000 times already, very actionable, but he also is kind of giving you this formula. So Christine, you talk about like, well, does he tell you how many goals you can have? I think like yes and kind of no, but when back in the chapter when we were talking about pick the game you want to win, and he lists off like career, finances, relationships, health, and fun. For me, my takeaway with this is like, I'm going to pick 3 of these things right now, because I'm in my, we're all kind of in this place of overwhelm with coming into the holidays and things. I'm going to pick 3 of those, and I'm going to make a goal for each one of those. And that's going to be where I'll focus. And so that's kind of my sweet spot. I think it's going to come down to what is your sweet spot. Maybe it's all 5, maybe it's 1, but having those categories, it's really helping me prioritize what I want.
He's really like, check your bandwidth. What have you got? What can you give it? If you've got 5 that you can do, great. If you start with 5 and you realize that 3 is what you actually have, awesome. That is 3 things you weren't doing before.
Yeah. I'm trying to be really realistic about bandwidth and time frame, and not overcommitting and not being in that chaos zone, because it's not fun. It's taking years off my life, I think.
Well, my first goal is listening to this book. There you go. That's my first. I don't know. What was the pillars? What was the first one?
Easy. That's your easy goal.
There you go. I like that.
And then our guaranteed goal is getting him to come to next year's convention.
I feel like at some point, and what's really annoying is that he posts about his family. So like me knowing about his family is not that I stalk him, is that I follow him on Twitter. Okay. Just by the way, I'm like 2 years ago, the sorority that his daughters are in did an event at my studio the year before she joined. The older daughter joined it. I'm like,
you got to get them back in there.
Because we're gonna that's my goal. But I also think he'd really like us.
I think so too. Well, Julia, I really like you. And I think I can speak for Christine when I say that as well. This was another excellent episode. Clearly we could talk to Julia all day. I could talk to her about books all day. And my last quick question for you, are you reading a business book right now that you would recommend to the industry?
I am actually reading one, but let me think about what it is. That's bad.
No, I get it.
I have to go look at my Goodreads.
Christine, do you read very many business books or professional development, personal development?
I actually listen to the podcast, The Goal Digger, and I feel like that's what helps me. But right now, like I said, I'm getting into the books. I am getting into the fantasy books right now.
Nice.
What is A Court
of Thorns and Roses?
I dived into that first, and now I'm into the Assassin's Blade, I think is what it's called, and I'm going through those. So I am actually shutting down my brain on business stuff and going toward
I get
that.
it. So I was like that for a long time. I couldn't possibly be asked to listen to those things because then I'd have to make a to-do list. But I'm finally back in it. I got an audio course recently called The Perfectionist's Guide to Taking Action on Creative Ideas. It's essentially an audiobook, but they just kind of put it all in Notion, and it's short episodes, and it is really filling the cup for me in that way.
Have you ever did The Artist's Way?
I did The Artist's Way last year. Shout out Krista Toller and the Kate sisters. We did it together.
Okay.
And I need to do it again.
I did it in 2001, the year I was getting married, which is a wild thing to do when you're about to do that. And it's one of those things that absolutely changed my life.
Really?
Absolutely. It's a thing I could proselytize about, but I don't. But
I would love, this is my big goal. I'm speaking out to existence. I think the book needs to be updated, and I would like to do that.
I think you were correct. Someone asked me if I would ever revisit it, and I said, I think there's some things in the book that aren't actionable now.
Yes.
But I think her follow-up book, I couldn't get into it. And after having such a profound impact on me, I was like, oh, why is this not resonating? And it I think it was because she was trying to cash in a little bit.
Yeah, I agree.
But I think you're right. I think it's time for some revision to it.
Yeah.
In a world where things are way more accessible. The world's a different place than it was 30 years ago when she wrote it.
Yeah. It's old.
It hurt because I'm 36. I was gonna say I'm 36, and I'm like, wow, like that. I didn't want to say that because of that.
It was older because when I did it in 2001, it was, I want to say maybe even like a decade old at that point.
Yeah, I'm trying to. My copy is too far up on the shelf. I can't see that far, but it's pretty old. The anniversary copy I have is a high number. Yeah. Did you find the recommendation, Julia?
Well, so I am obsessed with customer service. Y'all know that. I taught a class at convention about creating an exemplary customer service. Which was
a fabulous class.
Oh, thank you so much. So in the process of getting ready to teach that class, I started reading a lot of books about customer service and not finding exactly the unicorn that I need to find. And so I've been reading a lot of service books, and some are better than others. I'm also getting ready to read a book about time management that is supposed to be a little bit more realistic. It's Kendra Adachi's new book that I think is called Plan or Planner. It comes out today. I'm supposed to be getting mine tomorrow. So
I loved that you said you're getting ready to read a book about time management. That just made me laugh a lot.
It hasn't been released
I enjoyed
yet.
that.
It's a brand new book. But I haven't bought my calendar for 2025 yet. And normally I've had my calendar because I've used the same calendar for 10 years now.
Yeah.
And I love my planner a lot, but I haven't utilized it as well in the last couple of years, not in the same way. And I really want to read her take on this because I like her take on so many things that I want to read this book. So I know when it comes in, like, I'm going to put these books that I'm reading aside and pick this up. I also find that, like, with business books, I think one of the things people need to give themselves grace on is you don't have to sit down and read it start to finish. Right. I think you can pick and choose. I think if you read the opening chapter, if the opening chapter should get you ready to go, you should be able to look at the table of contents and see the context of what you're looking for and approach the book that way. And I'm not saying read the first paragraph of each chapter. This is not a biology class. Go through and look and see what resonates with you, and you can expand from that. And I tend to do that a lot because a lot of times I will get a book. I'm like, okay, this interests me, but I can also see like, if I read one more book that tells me I need to start journaling, that is not a thing that Julia McNair is going to do.
Julia McNair is afraid of her feelings. You guys heard it here first.
No, Julia McNair talks to a therapist every Thursday. She is not afraid of her feelings. But I can't do journaling because it makes me feel like I'm not doing it right. Like that's that thing where, like, the perfectionist and the I'm supposed to be creative, so why am I not making the most creative journal ever? Blah, 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 blah. So if it starts on that, I'm like, and skip. Like, I'm going to go to the next thing because I'm going to find something. And I think that a lot of people get very intimidated. Like, I'm going to read this book and I must do all the things. Well, no, this is their experience, and look and see their experience and see how it can apply to you.
Yeah. And I think that's why audiobooks in these business books are so successful, because you can just treat it like a podcast or something that's playing in the back. And because I don't want to sit down and read this book, even that we talked about here today. I want to listen to it and then get the copy later and be able to, like, rifle through it and get the points that I want. And I think this podcast is also a pretty good companion, if I do say so myself, to books. So I hope everybody enjoyed it. And you know, we'll take any business book recommendations that y'all have. We'll add them to the list and invite Julia back in. And maybe the next episode we will do this new book, The Plan, because that could be pretty big for us.
Yeah. Let's survive Christmas and then we can do that.
Amen. And on that note, thank you guys so much for listening. It was good to have you back for another episode, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Glazed Over is brought to you by the CCSA, the Contemporary Ceramic Studios Association. Thank you to our moderators, Amy Williams and Christine Steele. Intro and outro music by Scott Lester. Executive production by Louise Blazucki. Learn more about the CCSA at ccsaonline.com.